The Cardinals were eliminated from playoff contention on Wednesday night in what might have been Sonny Gray's final start with the Redbirds. We'll talk about those topics and more coming up on b-schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Thursday, September 25th, 2025. The dream is dead. The Cardinals' 2025 season, while it still contains 3 more games at Wrigley over the upcoming weekend, is over in terms of the Cardinals' contention for a postseason spot. I know many of you probably would have said, Brendan, it was over weeks ago. I've seen people say, honestly, it's been over since November when we kind of knew the direction the Cardinals would be heading for this upcoming season. That's fine if you feel that way, but it's officially over now as the Giants defeat the Cardinals 4-3 on Wednesday night. The Cardinals got cooperation from everybody else in the wild card standings. The Reds lost. The Mets lost. The Mets were the team that you needed to lose to have any hopes of advancing another day. But the Cardinals didn't take care of their business as they fell 4-3 to the Giants. So the Cardinals eliminated the Giants from postseason contention earlier in this series, and then the Giants returned the favor by doing it to the Cardinals in the finale. Sweeps are apparently hard, and so is making the playoffs if you are the 2025 Cardinals. So that's 3 straight years that the Cardinals don't get there, and how long is that streak going to end up getting before the Cardinals find their way back is maybe a fair question, as I haven't had a real long chance to dive into it yet on a podcast, but we're trying to get back to more regular appearances when it comes to the b-schaeff Daily schedule. September has been grueling, but we're gonna battle through now. You got me back. All right, so I haven't been able to talk about the article written by Katie Wu that I think is very important from last week, earlier this week. I'm going to find it and give you the date stamp on it. I'll give you the title of it so you can go read it. What have the Cardinals really answered during a transition season full of questions? That was the name of the title, the headline of the article written by Katie. And it was posted almost a week ago, Friday, September 19th, coming to you on Thursday, the 25th. So about a week this has been out there. And ever since I saw it, I have considered it the soft launch of what ultimately is going to end up being the Brendan Donovan trade this offseason. I do not expect Brendan Donovan to still be with the Cardinals. Like, that's my takeaway from the article. Maybe that is an oversimplification, and maybe they'll tell us something on Tuesday. We're expected to hear from Chaim Bloom and the DeWitts in a press conference on Tuesday. Mozeliak is expected to have his own press conference separate from the other one on Monday after the season ends, which I think actually makes sense. If Mo's going to have one at all, it shouldn't be lumped into what the kind of forward-facing press conference is going to be with Chaim Bloom and ownership. So I think that makes some sense. But unless we find out on Tuesday that the Cardinals say something that I'm not expecting regarding Brendan Donovan and where he fits into the big picture of things, I do expect that he will be floated out there in a trade. I think teams will be knocking on the Cardinals' door, and I would not be surprised if he ends up getting moved because it feels like the alternative to that is a contract extension, and I just don't see the Cardinals based on, again, the reporting from Katie implying that, you know, they're kind of aware within the organization now that they need a rebuild and that it's going to be a multi-year deal. They've avoided like the plague saying it for 2025. I think that should frustrate people. Largely, the response has been positive, which I'm sure is exactly what Cardinals ownership was hoping, that people would say, all right, I mean, people have been asking for a rebuild, and so if we tell them we're going to give them a rebuild, hopefully people don't get mad at us. I think it's taking the easy way out personally, because I don't look at the Cardinals team over the last 2-3 years outside of 2023 when they were objectively bad. They haven't been bad. They won 83 games last year, trying to put some Flex Seal tape on the bottom of a boat that was leaking, and then they decided and did the more responsible thing and said, all right, we're not going to continue to do that. We've got some bigger bloated contracts still on the books for veterans, but the ones that we can't get rid of, we're just going to continue to roll those guys out there. We're not adding to it, though. We're not going out and, you know, trying to patch things up again for 2025. We're just going to roll out what we have, and that's going to be a bit of a retool. And, you know, you could make the case that they stuck with veterans like Eric Fetty a little bit too long. I've made that case. But otherwise, it was largely a season that kind of played out the way that they said it would. And I didn't have a ton of issues with it. You know, you were disappointed that the Cardinals are going to fall a little bit short of the playoffs, but they didn't managed the last offseason as though they were going to be a postseason team in 2025. They just didn't. And you found out some good things about some of your players. Ivan Herrera is a real hitter in this league. We've seen it over the course of nearly a full season. Had some injuries, but somebody that has certainly emerged. Alec Burleson has done the same offensively. You've seen Mason Wynn put together a full season defensively where he's going to win the Gold Glove. There are things that are certainly positives to take away from the season. Brendan Donovan was an all-star. Like, you've got the makings of something. I think pitching is the primary thing that you've got to fix, but I think 12 months from now we might be talking about Quinn Matthews and Liam Doyle as on the rise major league starters, and that makes your rotation look a lot different with Michael McGreevy, Matthew Liberatore as sort of the core of what a five-man rotation would look like, and you got to fill another spot. Palante is probably not somebody you feel great about right now, but they're potentially going to bring him back in the second year of arbitration eligibility. He'll make between $2.5 and $3 million. Maybe he's your number 5 starter, but I'm talking about not necessarily April 2026, but I'm looking toward by the end of next season. What do we know about these guys? And I think you might have a little bit of something in Quinn Matthews and Liam Doyle that can help to fill the gap of where you lack right now in the starting rotation. And to me, with the core that you have offensively, which there are certainly some questions still, like, is Victor Scott a guy that can play every day? Can he justify an everyday lineup spot with his offensive performance? Just was not very good this year. Jordan Walker was dreadful offensively, and he didn't look very good defensively last night in the field either. Just very lackadaisical going after the fly ball in the right field corner. And so, those are questions for sure that have to be answered. What's the role for a Lars Nootbaar, right? This was the season for Donovan and Nootbaar where you looked at both of those guys and said, all right, we need to see it. And if we do, then maybe those are some extension candidates. Well, from Nootbaar, we didn't see it. Ultimately, Lars Nootbaar did not have the season with the durability that I think was necessary and the production that was necessary to say, yeah, this is a guy that you want to build around. So he's a trade candidate in my mind at this point. Brendan Donovan, on the other hand, while durability might be a question mark because he has had his fair share of injuries over the last few seasons as well, all-star campaign, clearly a very good hitter, a versatile defender, a great guy for the clubhouse. I've seen everything that I would need to see from Brendan Donovan to ink him to a contract extension. But the Cardinals are not in a place as an organization, if you read Katie Woo and the way that her sources talk about the next couple of years for the Cardinals, that doesn't read to me that the Cardinals are a team that sees themselves doing a lot of winning over the next 2 years. And if that's the case, would they sort of use that as the out to cash in their chips on the value that Brendan Donovan currently has in the trade market? Because he will be a free agent after 2027. And if you don't plan to be good till 2028, although you could sign him to an extension and help him, or allow him, I should say, to be the bridge between eras of Cardinal baseball, be part of it the next time you're truly ready to win in 2028, which, like I am claiming right here, it doesn't need to be that long of a wait if you hit on a couple of these pitching prospects and just kind of retain the young talent that you have offensively for the most part. You can make trades, but you don't have to completely strip it down to the studs. There are Cardinals fans who believe that you do have to strip it down to the studs. I don't believe that. I believe that regardless of how deep into a rebuild you would want to go, it doesn't make any sense for Arenado to be here next year, and he won't be. He's gone, I promise. Sonny Gray, I am pretty damn sure is not going to be on this team next year. I'm going to call it 100% sure that Arenado will not be a Cardinal on opening day. 98% sure that Sonny Gray will not be a Cardinal on opening day. Those are the things that would happen anyway. To take that next step of a rebuild, you start to look at the guys that, okay, do they have 2 or fewer years remaining of team control? Do they have some trade value? Okay, we're cashing in our chips on those guys. And it's going to be even more convenient for the Cardinals to do it with Brendan Donovan because they have a player in AAA who's big league ready and can play the same position that Donovan has played. And that's an argument that a lot of Cardinals fans would say, why are we obsessing over Brendan Donovan? He is a fine player, but you have Weatherholt that can take his spot. I will continue to maintain that having more good players is better than having fewer. And Brendan Donovan, in my opinion, is not going to fall off a cliff over the next 5 seasons. He's age 28, going to be in his age 29 season next year, if I'm not mistaken. Let me find the exact number on that. He's 28 years old. He doesn't turn 29 until January. Brendan Donovan, a 5-year contract extension this offseason that buys out 2-3 years of his free agent eligibility, or maybe it's a 4-year extension, buys out 2 years of ARB, tack on a couple of years of free agency and friendly options that can compel him to want to sign the deal, whatever it needs to look like. Because I think if he waits until he's 29, 30 years old to hit free agency, now you're talking about if you're looking for a 5-year deal, teams are going to go, yeah, but you're going to be 35 by the end of it. Then it's certainly a conversation that you would say, I don't really think that's worth it. But I think you're going to get good quality prime years out of Brendan Donovan in 2027, 2028, 2029, probably 2030. I think it would make sense for both sides to explore. My concern is the article written by Katie Lou, because I believe what she's reporting. She knows her stuff. She's got great sources, and it seems to be setting the table. I call it the soft launch of the Brendan Donovan trade, because leaning more into a real rebuild goes beyond dumping Arenado, paying him to go away, goes beyond trying to get whatever you can for Sonny Gray and saving some cash, because he has been underwhelming. Was fine in a quality start last night. Hopefully the Giants were paying attention. 7 strikeouts. Sonny Gray really has been an enigma for the Cardinals over the past 2 years. 2 consecutive 200-plus strikeout seasons, while also giving up career highs in home runs. 21 homers last year, 25 this year, I believe, are the tallies on that. The only 2 years of his career in which he has given up more than, or 20 or more home runs, and has back-to-back 200 strikeout seasons. So, like, you're getting the best of both worlds. It's an enigma, but that's been the Sonny Gray experience. I still think even at a bloated contract of $35 million, you can get somebody like the Giants to take on a portion of that contract, maybe not the majority of it, but there are teams. I mean, you think about what the free agent market is going to look like. If you get a Sonny Gray for $15 or $20 million, that I think is going to be worth it to a lot of teams, because you see the upside. If you can figure out a way to get him to cut down on the strikeouts, or excuse me, don't cut down on the strikeouts, keep those coming. Cut down on the home runs. He's a completely different pitcher. He's at ERA 3.5. If he's got, career norms of long balls given up instead of a 4.1 ERA or whatever it is that he had this year. So I think there's going to be some interest in him. The Cardinals will probably get a solid prospect back, and they'll get some cost savings. Totally fine with that. The next layer to that, though, is the Brendan Donovan thing. And I think it's a matter of convenience that, well, we don't want to be tied to potentially having to pay anybody, because we don't know how soon we're going to be able to turn this thing around. And they can use the excuse or the logic, and fans have already told it to me, so clearly people are going to buy it, that, well, Weatherholt plays second, that's going to be a perfect fit. More good players, better than fewer. I would rather have one of the two play third base and have Gorman DH, or have Donovan available to slide into left field, because if you trade Nootbaar, you could go Burleson in right field, Donovan in left field, Victor Scott in center. I know the Cardinals have been very hesitant. We haven't seen very much of Brendan Donovan in left field this year. I think that's been by design. He's been banged up. They think it could keep him healthier to keep him in one position. That's been their preference. But, do you really want to count on Jordan Walker opening day 2026? Maybe you do. They're counting on Ivan Herrera. They're talking about he's going to be the catcher. They're going to give him an elbow surgery and clean up some loose bodies in the elbow, and then he's going to try to see if that allows for him to make strides behind the plate, throwing all of those things that can keep him as a catcher, which, if he is a league average defensive catcher, he is one of the top catchers in baseball based on what he does at the plate. So that's very much an understandable thing to do in a year that's sort of like a rebuild. You're not necessarily looking to sell out for the win in 2026. I get it. But I keep coming back to the Brendan Donovan thing, and I will die on this hill. This will be the hill that I die on in the offseason, and I can already tell the public sentiment is somewhat split on it. There are people who agree with me. There are people who do not agree with me and say, I saw a comment today, somebody said, what are we talking about, a slap-hitting second baseman? We've got Weatherholt. I think people vastly underrate Brendan Donovan and the value that he brings. But for his sake, unless the Cardinals are going to do right by him and give him a contract, I think it honestly makes sense to trade him from his standpoint, because he can go somewhere, get the extension probably that he's looking for, and do so with a contender. But I do think the Cardinals will be losing quite a bit of value, not only on the field, but what they could get in the clubhouse as they try to usher young players through. There's nobody in baseball that I'd rather see as a veteran leader on a team of young guys than Brendan Donovan. I think there would be a ton of value to that. And frankly, I understand the side of it that if you're getting an elite prospect, or if you're getting, people have said, well, I would trade Brendan Donovan if I'm getting a number 2 starter. Okay, I get that part, but I just don't really think that's realistic. And I don't think that's what the Cardinals will be targeting, because if they're really trying to rebuild, I think they'll trade for some AA prospects. They're hoping to get some teams' top 10 guys, but prospects, man, you're just hoping those turn into, I don't know, good players like Brendan Donovan, for example. So and it's not like the money, what it's going to serve to do. And again, I'm consistent. You will not find anybody as consistent as me. Well, maybe you will. But you won't find anybody more consistent. I'm not going to say one thing and then later pretend I said something else. I'm not going to do that to you. I'm going to acknowledge where I am right now, and we'll find out in the future whether I was right or wrong. But I have a very firm stance on Brendan Donovan. The contract, like you think about the Tommy Edman contract that the Dodgers signed. Remember, everybody was saying, oh, we've got all these second basemen. We've got all these utility guys. You don't need Tommy Edman. They weren't thrilled with the return of Eric Fetty. I get that part. But the trade of Edman, I think people kind of understood because they said, well, you've got other guys. You've got Donovan that does the same stuff. Donovan, to me, I like Edman as a player. Donovan is for sure a better player. The Dodgers throw money around. They signed Edman to a 5-year, $74 million extension. That is a hefty price. And I think it's more like 5 years and 60, but there was a signing bonus attached. It's a hefty price for a guy OPSing 665 this year. 84 is his OPS plus. He brings value defensively for sure. Probably even a little bit of a better defender than Brendan Donovan. But Brendan Donovan has a gold glove as a utility defender, so I'm not going to poo-poo him defensively. Donovan's OPS is more than 100 points higher than Tommy Edman's this year. 775 is the OPS. He's a doubles machine, 32 doubles. Doesn't strike out, just flat out doesn't strike out. Has never had a 100 strikeout season in his career over, 4 seasons in which he's had at least 371 plate appearances in every year. Last year, 652 plate appearances, was an Iron Man, and struck out 81 times. I mean, you talk about a lineup that contains a guy like him, a guy like Herrera who doesn't strike out, a guy like Burleson who doesn't strike out. There is just simply no reason that the Cardinals cannot build around that strategically with some of the young guys that are coming up, and certainly you have to draft and develop more of them. But I just see that as there are anchors to this lineup that can get you turned around quicker because you're not in the doldrums right now. It feels crappy because you're in the middle, but they're going to win 80 games this year. I mean, they're not a terrible baseball team. They're just kind of mediocre. But trim the fat. I mean, Arenado, that's part of the fat. He has underperformed his contract. Sonny Gray, if you're paying him $35 million, I don't think you're going to get great value next year. Cardinals are going to have to pay him $15 million, for example, and buy a prospect by letting him go pitch somewhere else. Like, that's the angle on a Sonny Gray trade. He's got to approve it. That's part of the conversation here as well. But as I started with the beginning of this podcast, kind of saying that I would dive into, was that the last start for Sonny Gray? I already kind of buried the lead and said, I think 98% chance, that he's going to be traded. This is a quote courtesy of Derek Gould. Sonny Gray said, I signed here 2 years ago with the expectation of winning and trying to win, and that hasn't played out that way. I want to win, and I expect to win. I think I do want, and to the question of want to consider waiving my no trade, just to be frank and honest. So he's ready to go. He wasn't ready to go this time last year. He wanted to give it a little bit more of a chance. He had just, gone through the free agency process, and so that was a grueling expedition for him, and he just didn't want to just uproot after 1 year. But now he's ready. He sees his writing on the wall. The Cardinals aren't going anywhere. And so they're going to trade him. They're going to trade Arenado. Those things are dead set in my mind. They're both happening. That's just sensible. The next step of that, though, admits to the fans that we're not going to be good in 26 and we're not going to be good in 27. Or we're very much preparing not to be. I would understand it for 26 because, again, I don't think it's an offseason where they're going to spend much money. What I would do, and you'll hear this from me over and over again throughout the offseason, I would 15 to 20 of the 40-man roster, poof, gone. Get them out of here. You need to make change. You need to churn through. Heimblum and his staff can identify free agents that can fill the back half of the 40-man in some of the pieces and parts. You need to identify like some depth, right? Right-handed hitting outfielder, a depth piece. Some infielders. You can, and look, guys like Nathan Church, Cesar Prieto, they might stick around because unless they feel like they can identify somebody at a similar price point, just major league minimum, to be able to kind of fill those roles. I think that's organizational depth, and some of those guys will stick around. That'll be perfectly suitable. But there's a lot of pieces and parts that I think you do need to churn through. But I would also make room for 2 free agent signings. 2 starting pitchers. $5 or $6 million a pop. Pair those 2 guys coming into spring training with Matthew Liberatore, with Michael McGreevy, with, yes, if you want to spend the $3 million on Andre Palante, you could bring him back. I'm agnostic on that one because I do fear that we've maybe seen his best and it happened in 2024 and it's not recent at this point. But if you're just trying to say, you know what, we're just going to spend $13 million to make sure the bottom of our rotation does not completely fall out until Quinn Matthews and Liam Doyle and others, Eshaun Henderson, Bryson Motts, etc., are ready. And so to do that, we spend $5 million on a placeholder, whether it's Jose Quintana, somebody like that. You do it again. You do it twice. And you pair those guys with the three guys you have coming back. You trade Sonny Gray. Maybe get an arm for him. Maybe you get a AAA arm that you just don't care about his development. You throw him into the rotation next year and see what's up. And that way, you haven't spent a bunch. You spent basically the equivalent of what you spent on one Lance Lynn or one Kyle Gibson the previous offseason. And you come into spring training with those guys, and if one of them stinks on ice, you just cut him. Congrats on your $5 million, but that's the value proposition, because Chaim Bloom, Rob Strofolio, those guys can identify a couple of diamonds in the rough, and they might be right, they might be wrong. Hopefully they're right. But if I'm ownership, that's what I would do. I would commission that type of spending, and really all it's going to do is offset what you're saving on Sonny Gray. Take whatever you are able to save on Sonny Gray. Like it's $35 million. If you have to eat 20, take the cost savings and keep payroll stagnant. Don't let it drop off the table once again, because you're going to have to eat the entire Arenado contract. You're not going to save much money there at all. Whatever you save on Sonny, put it back into 2 free agent pitchers, or you can call it 2 free agents plus Palante if you feel like it's worthwhile to add that bullet to the chamber. That's what I would do, and I don't think the Cardinals have to be terrible in 2026 if you do that. Because you can get through April, May, June, July with those couple of arms. One of them's going to suck and he's going to get hurt. The other one might be serviceable. And I'm not really asking for a lot, because we're comparing it to what Palante gave you this year, what Michaelis gave you this year. Replace Michaelis, and people wouldn't like to hear it, but hell, bring Michaelis back for $5 million. That would be nightmarish, and so I'm not suggesting that. But find somebody with a little bit more upside than Michaelis. Take a chance. Spend your $5 million on that player, and try to replicate Michaelis' production with more ceiling, and you don't lose any ground compared to what this year's team accomplished. Do it again with Palante, right? Try to replace that Palante production at around the same salary if you can. And if you're right, great. If not, you still have Palante waiting in the wings to go have a 5 ERA. Give it a shot. Maybe they're willing to do that. And you pair that with McGreevy, a full season of McGreevy, another full season of Liberatore. Obviously, you have to brace for injury, because those will happen. And that's why I said sign a couple of them. So you come in with like 6, including Palante, and put yourself into a situation where, like, I'm counting Kyle Leahy as somebody that I would give a chance to start. And then you're not asking Quinn Matthews to be ready, but if he shows you that he is, you're able to cut a Palante or cut somebody else that you just spent a little bit of money on. Maybe there's an injury. Well, it's even easier now. If Quinn Matthews shows you he's ready, put him in the rotation. But you don't have to force it. Instead of signing those $5 million pitchers, they might decide to just do it all internally, and we'll see how that works out. But I think as you go through all of that, Brendan Donovan would be the player that I would keep, because like I said, I think if you had a core next year of Donovan, Herrera, Burleson offensively, up the middle, you're talking about Victor Scott in center field. He's batting 9th. He's not going to produce offensively, but maybe he surprises you. He's a really good defender. We know that. Mason Wynn, they got to get more out of Mason Wynn offensively. They just have to, or he's not the player that I think he's going to be. But there'll be time for the step forward from him. I mean, that's 5-6 guys right there that I feel like. Gorman's going to be pretty league average, but I think if you wanted to build around him, I would personally trade Gorman. I would trade Gorman, and I would play Weatherholt or Donovan at third. And if they don't think third base defense is going to be good from either of those guys, who cares? You're rebuilding. Try Weatherholt there. If you can't manage it, then trade Donovan down the line and move Weatherholt to second. But Weatherholt's done a nice enough job managing shortstop, so I would be totally fine with that. Burleson in left. Contreras. Contreras is still at hitting at a prime level. I think that's a lineup. That's like a 7-man group that, okay, is Sajaci one of your other pieces? That's a little underwhelming, but maybe he takes a step forward. Is Jordan Walker the 9th name here, starting in right field? That's underwhelming, but maybe he takes a step forward. The offense doesn't really have to be much worse next year, because it's like going to be all the same guys. If you decide to make it worse by taking out Brendan Donovan, you're hoping that Weatherholt can replicate his production. Maybe he can, but if he can, why are you conceding Brendan Donovan? Just put him in the lineup together, and you'll have a more potent lineup. if Weatherholt turns out to be a Rookie of the Year candidate. Yes, pitching is the question. Bullpen is always going to be the question, but I think guys like Swanson, O'Brien have emerged to show you that like you're going to have options back there. I'm not asking Bill DeWitt to spend a bunch of money. I'm just asking him not to concede the 2026 season before it starts. I'm asking the Cardinals not to concede the 2027 season before the 2026 season starts. It doesn't take a lot of payroll. I really don't think it does. But there's going to be a very interesting offseason. Like I said, I may be in the minority on the Brendan Donovan thing, but I'm okay with that. Sonny Gray, I think that one's obvious. I think he's ready for it. You're ready for it. If Contreras is ready, I do think you ask him. I think you offer him that opportunity. Say, hey, Wilson, I know you've been pretty steadfast that you're not wanting to go anywhere. We're kind of doing this whole thing again, though. It's going to be another year of this, and maybe more than a year. You're coming on to the final year of your contract here soon. So you need to look at Contreras. He's been here for 3 years now. Yeah, so he's got 2 years left. The 2 years of rebuild, and then his career's, winding down at that point. It'll be age 35 season. Wilson Contreras is currently 33. He'll turn 34 in May. So he might have some more good years as a DH down the line, but had a pretty good offensive season. Was down compared to last year, but still pretty productive. I mean, I would offer him the opportunity because it's not like you're teaming with outfield options right now, and I am kind of counting Nootbaar as somebody that will be traded. But if you instead trade Contreras, you save some money doing that. I think his bat is still good enough that you won't have to eat the whole contract on that one. You can put Burleson at first base, and that opens up left field. Maybe Nootbaar sticks around. Maybe the Cardinals' view of Nootbaar is like, look, if we're not getting the offers for him this offseason that we like, we'll just run it back with him. And if he plays, he's not extended. You're not giving an extension, but if he plays well and we're 10 games under 500 in July, then will be the time to trade him with a year and a half left of control. And frankly, I would live with if they did the same thing with Donovan, because I realize that you could end up losing out on his window, where right now might be the highest trade value if he doesn't stay healthy or if he falls off. Then Donovan isn't exactly, that's a scary use of an asset if right now is his highest value. But this is an example of, I think Cardinals fans and baseball fans will sometimes do this, where they say, well, Donovan was an all-star this year. This is his highest value. Trade him now. Great theory. Do you know that it's his highest value? What are the Cardinals being offered? If they're being offered something that reflects good value, then absolutely, you can make that deal. I'm a reasonable person. But if you're just saying, well, timing-wise, he did this year, and so we think he's got value, but if the rest of the league is kind of saying, we don't value him as much as you do, Cardinals, and the Cardinals keep him and then he declines, and then people say, oh my gosh, they wasted his trade value. We don't necessarily know what the trade value is. The trade value is whatever a team is offering for him at this point in time. They did this with Nolan Gorman because they said, oh my gosh, he hit 27 home runs, and that means he's going to hit 35 next year. Trade him now when his value is at his height in case he doesn't hit the 35 home runs. It's like, well, 29 other teams probably thought he wasn't going to hit the 35 home runs. They saw the holes in his swing, and they were right. So you can't say, well, the Cardinals missed on Gorman's trade value, because I don't know if he ever had any. Not quite to the degree that Cardinals fans probably thought. So these are like the constructive conversations that I think are valuable when it comes to evaluating what this offseason is going to be. We've got to be fair and cover all the bases. We can't just make assumptions and then blame the Cardinals if they don't act accordingly. So that's what I'm going to try to do on B-Schaeff Daily. I ended up talking way more about Brendan Donovan than I expected, and so I might even put him as part of the title of this video. But we'll see. This will be a conversation we have lots of times in the offseason as more information comes to light. So appreciate you guys, as always, for listening. That'll do it for this edition of the show. We'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.